Today, we're going to talk about something really important. It's about the legacy we all hope to leave behind, and how the most valuable lessons we learn in life are often the absolute hardest ones to share. So let's just start right here. The central, poignant regret of later life is often the realization that the most pivotal, difficult, and valuable lessons, the ones you learned over decades of living, are the very stories you feel unable, or maybe even unwilling, to share. Just let that sink in for a second. It's this quiet, nagging feeling that so many people have, this sense that all the wisdom you fought for, the stuff that was really forged in the fire, might just be lost.
And this points to a kind of hidden truth, right? Your most important stories, I'm talking about the ones about failure, about struggle, about getting it all wrong before you finally got it right, they're often just trapped. They get locked away by this really powerful silence. It's a huge paradox when you think about it. The very experiences that could be a lifeline, a real roadmap for your kids and grandkids, are the ones that are just completely left off the map.
Now, look, this isn't just some personal quirk. This is a real psychological phenomenon. There's actually a name for it: the transparency barrier. The best way to think of it is like an invisible wall that just goes up, and it stops us from sharing our real, authentic struggles. And it gets particularly strong later in life, when we feel all this pressure to have figured everything out. That wall is built brick by brick out of pride, a desire to protect the people we love, and honestly, a deep-seated fear of being judged.
So what is that wall made of, really? Why do we instinctively hide the very stories that could be our greatest gift? Well, that brings us right here, to the fear of imperfection. We're going to dig into why we hide our most important stories in the first place. Okay, so at the very heart of all this silence is a really specific anxiety. Psychologists call it generational status fear. And this isn't just some vague worry. No, it's the very concrete fear that if you reveal your past failures, maybe a business that went under, a rocky period in your marriage, a huge career mistake, that it will somehow erode your current status as the wise, stable elder. It's that little voice in your head asking, if they knew how much I messed up, would they still respect me? Would they still see me as the person they can count on? It's a totally natural fear, and it's one of the main reasons we keep things buried.
And this creates a huge internal conflict. On one side, you've got this immense pressure from the world, from yourself, to present what we could call the myth of the perfect narrative. The highlight reel. The story of your life with all the rough parts edited out, where it's just uninterrupted success and wisdom. But then, on the other side, there's this deep, deep desire to leave behind an authentic legacy. And that's the real stuff. The messy, hard-won wisdom that you can only get from falling down and figuring out how to get back up. So you're constantly living in the tension between these two things. And here's why that tension is so important. At this stage of life, there's this profound natural drive inside us to guide the next generation. It's this need to contribute something that's going to outlast us. Psychologists call this generativity. But here's the thing. Real generativity isn't about showing off a perfect life. It's about giving the people who come after you a real map, one that shows the dead ends and the bumpy roads and all the detours you had to take to find a better way. To really fulfill that deep need, you have to break through that fear of looking imperfect.
Okay, so we know the fear is real. We know the silence is the problem. So how on earth do you break through it safely? How do you share that authentic legacy without setting off all those alarm bells of generational status fear? Well, that brings us to the solution, a protocol for wisdom. And this isn't about just, being vulnerable. This is a structured, thoughtful way to do it. It's about safe and powerful storytelling. But before we get to the how, we have to accept one core principle. And it's this: silence is a status defense. It's a protective mechanism. We don't keep quiet because we're weak or ashamed. We do it to protect our role in the family, our hard-won status. So to get past it, we don't just need more guts. We need a better strategy, one that lets us share the wisdom while actually enhancing our status, not risking it.
And that strategy has a name. The solution is the Structured Disclosure Protocol, or SDP for short. Think of it like a playbook, a set of rules for sharing these difficult stories. It's a reliable method designed to completely reframe the act of sharing. It helps you turn what feels like a confession into a really powerful teaching moment.
So this protocol is built on 3 simple core ideas. First, and this is the most important one, is the wisdom first rule. This is a huge shift. You don't lead with, "Oh, I messed up." You lead with, "Let me tell you a powerful lesson I learned about resilience." The story just becomes the proof of the wisdom. It's not a confession. Second, the curated audience mandate. This is absolutely critical. You don't tell these stories to just anyone. You choose someone who's receptive, someone who's not going to judge, a person who's earned the right to hear it.
And third, the story vault imperative. This just means you document it. Write it down, record your voice, whatever works. You secure that legacy so it can't be worn away by time or silenced forever. It makes the wisdom real and permanent.
All right, so that's the theory. But how does this actually work in real life? How do you apply this protocol step by step? Let's get into a really practical guide for sharing your stories safely. Here are 4 really gentle, doable steps. First, create what's called the 3-part wisdom script. Before you say a word to anyone, just jot down the story. What was the context back then? What was the consequence of what happened? And what is the single consolidated lesson you learned? This keeps the whole thing focused on wisdom. Second, start a story vault habit. Just a small commitment. Try to document one of these hidden stories a month. That's it. It makes it feel way less overwhelming. Third, when you do decide to share a story out loud, use a context-granting preface. This just means you start by asking for a little empathy. You could say something like, "Now, to really get this story, you have to remember it was a different time, and this is what was going on." It invites the listener to be on your team, not your judge. And finally, use the disclosure test. Ask yourself, can I tell this story without getting completely overwhelmed by emotion? If the answer is yes, that's a good sign it's been processed into wisdom. If not, it probably needs a little more time in the vault. You only share it when it feels resolved for you. And you know, using this protocol isn't just some clever communication tactic. It serves a much deeper purpose. It's about building something that will truly last, a legacy of truth. Let's talk about the ultimate goal here. Because sharing your full, complex story, the good times, and yes, most importantly, the structured stories of your failures, that is the highest form of generativity there is. This act of structured, thoughtful sharing isn't weakness. It is the most powerful gift of guidance you can possibly give. It says to the next generation, look, my path wasn't a straight line and yours doesn't have to be either. Here's how I got through the storms, you can too. And following this path of authentic sharing leads to this incredible psychological reward. It's a state that psychologists call ego integrity. What is that? It's the profound, quiet acceptance of your entire life. The successes, the failures, all of it, as meaningful and complete. It's the perfect antidote to that regret we started with. By making peace with your own stories and then offering them up as a gift, you weave them all into a complete, beautiful, meaningful whole.
So let's boil this all down. What's the core takeaway? Well, first, we hide our most important stories because of a totally natural fear of losing our status. Second, to truly guide the next generation, we have to share the wisdom from those hidden stories. Third, the structured disclosure protocol gives us a safe and meaningful way to do that. And finally, and this is the game changer, it reframes the whole thing as a transfer of wisdom, not a confession of fault. That protects everyone involved.
And that brings me to a final question, just for you. Something to think about long after this is over. What is your hidden story? What is that one experience, that one failure, that contains a lesson that people you love really need to hear? So here is your gentle challenge for the week. Just identify that one story. You don't have to tell anyone yet. This is just for you. Sometime this week, sit down and just write out its consolidated lesson, that one single sentence of wisdom that the story taught you. Because that's where the real work begins. Remember, your most important stories, the ones about resilience and failure, are often trapped by a very natural fear of losing your place. But we've learned there's a way through. The structured disclosure protocol, with its wisdom-first rule and the safety of the story vault, is the key. It lets you reframe the narrative. By choosing to share your full, complex truth in this way, you leave behind something so much more powerful than a perfect story. You leave an authentic legacy of wisdom that ensures your life has enduring meaning and impact.